Captain Elias Rowe stood alone on the bridge of the carrier Vigilant Dawn, staring into the black emptiness beyond the viewport. The stars, once a map of hope and guidance, now seemed dead. One by one, the colonies of humanity had stopped responding. No explosions, no alarms, no cries for help, just silence. The Council called it the Dark, an unseen force consuming entire worlds, leaving nothing behind but despair. Elias had seen war, rebellion, famine, but this was something entirely different, something that made the cold, endless void feel alive and hungry. He had lost everything once before. His parents, caught in a fringe rebellion, had died when he was a boy. His sister, barely older than a child, had vanished in the chaos, leaving him with nothing but memories and a rigid sense of duty. That duty had kept him alive through the endless campaigns, through the loss of friends, the crushing weight of command, and the nights when sleep was a stranger. Now that same duty called him to face something that no human had ever faced before: the dark. The Council's orders were simple: investigate the edge of the Perseus Veil and report back. It was a mission no one expected to survive. The fleet was a skeleton of what humanity once had, worn thin by decades of internal strife, yet still brave enough to venture into the unknown. Elias gripped the edge of the viewport, feeling the hum of the ship beneath his hands, wondering if bravery alone could face a force that devoured hope itself. As they crossed the threshold, sensors began to fail. The stars seemed to bend, their light refracted in impossible angles. The darkness was alive. It whispered in static and empty space. The crew's chatter turned into nervous silence. Engineers cursed at systems that no longer obeyed physics. Pilots gripped their controls like life depended on it, because in a way it did. And then, in the midst of that suffocating void, they saw her. She floated inside a shattered alien vessel, her body untouched by the destruction around her. Pale, faintly glowing skin reflected the eerie light of dying stars. Her hair shimmered like threads of silver in the dimness, floating as if underwater. When her eyes opened, they were the first sign of life anyone had seen in months. They were wide and luminous, filled with fear and intelligence, with something else, something that reached deep inside Elias and tugged at a memory he didn't know he had. The Council wanted her contained immediately, wanted to dissect and interrogate her for information. But Elias hesitated. There was a fragility in her presence, a sense that she was not just alive but carrying something impossible, something precious. He ordered the medical team to treat her gently, to speak softly. He stood beside her, silently promising that she was safe, even if he was not sure how he could protect her. She could not speak a language he knew, but when she finally whispered, it was clear she understood more than she should. Her voice was soft, trembling, yet commanding attention. "Your people," she said, and then paused, eyes searching his. "They still fight." Elias felt a weight in those words, a mixture of praise and warning. The dark was patient, it was ruthless, but here was something that could see past it, something that had survived its touch. For the first time in months, maybe years, hope breathed again on the bridge of the Vigilant Dawn. The crew watched in awe and confusion as Elias sat beside her, offering nothing but silent company. The void beyond them remained vast and merciless, but for the first time it seemed as though humanity had a chance, a fragile, uncertain chance to fight back. And Elias, broken by loss yet steadfast in his resolve, understood that this alien girl, drifting among the ruins of her world, might be the key. The stars had gone silent, the dark waited patiently, and yet in the middle of despair a spark had appeared. And for Elias that spark, small and trembling, was enough to keep him standing. Elias had named her Lyra, though he did not know if it was her real name. She did not speak human languages, but she understood more than anyone expected. Every gesture, every glance seemed loaded with meaning. Even the way she floated inside the medical bay, delicate and unbroken despite the chaos around her, carried a strange command of presence. It was as if she could sense everything: fear, hope, pain, and defiance, all at once. The crew was cautious. Some were afraid of her, others wanted answers, but Elias remained her shield. He would not allow anyone to touch her without consent, even when the council demanded immediate interrogation. They did not understand, he thought bitterly, that Lyra was not a tool. She was something else, something dangerous, yes, but also fragile, something the universe had spared for a reason, and he intended to honor that. It did not take long for her to begin learning. Slowly, almost painfully, she mimicked gestures, repeated words, and watched human behavior like a careful student. She would tilt her head curiously at objects, smile faintly at humor she did not yet comprehend, and sometimes, in the quiet hours, stare at the stars and hum in a tone that sounded like lost music. Elias watched her in wonder. No one had ever observed the universe with such awe. And in that awe, he felt a stirring he had long forgotten. Hope that was not tethered to duty or obligation, but alive and breathing. Then she began to speak of the dark, not as humans described it with words like enemy or threat, but as something ancient, something patient, something hungry. She gestured at the void beyond the ship, her pale hands painting patterns in the air. Elias struggled to understand, but slowly the meaning came through. The dark did not destroy with explosions. It destroyed by consuming the will to resist, by turning hope to ash and courage to doubt. Entire civilizations had fallen before it, not in fire or war, but in quiet surrender. One night when the ship was hushed and only the soft hum of the engines filled the corridors, Lyra sat near the observation window. Elias joined her. They did not speak at first. He watched her pale form reflect in the glass, her eyes tracing the black void beyond the stars. Then in her soft, trembling voice, she said words that seemed almost sacred. "Your people still fight." Elias felt a lump in his throat. Humanity had survived centuries of war, famine, and betrayal, but no one had ever called it beautiful before. And somehow, in those two words, she had. "What do you see?" he asked quietly. "The dark," she said, her glowing eyes fixed on the empty void. "It waits, it watches, it chooses who is strong and who will bend. Many have bent, many have fallen, your people you do not." Her gaze lingered on him, searching. And in that searching, Elias realized something terrifying and exhilarating at once. She believed in humans, not just as survivors but as fighters, as beings capable of defiance against a universe that sought to snuff out light. The crew began to notice a change in themselves as well. Lyra's presence was like a gentle pressure on their hearts. She did not command. She did not demand. Yet somehow, seeing her, listening to her, made them stand taller, work harder, and remember why they fought. Fear still lurked, but it no longer ruled them. Elias felt it too. Each day he spent near her, each quiet conversation, each unspoken connection was like a small spark against the darkness pressing on humanity. And though he did not fully understand her, he knew one thing with certainty. If the universe had sent this girl to him, it was because she was more than just alive. She was hope itself, fragile and radiant, and he would protect it, no matter what the cost. As the fleet drifted deeper into the veil, the dark pressed closer. And Elias, standing beside Lyra, realized that for the first time in his life, he was not afraid. Not because the danger was gone, but because he had a reason to fight, a reason that went beyond orders, beyond duty, beyond survival. He had Lyra. And in her he glimpsed the one thing the dark could never understand, the will to resist, the stubbornness to hope, and the courage to carry it forward, no matter how deep the darkness ran. For the first time since the stars went silent, humanity had a chance. And in Lyra's glowing eyes, Elias saw the path through the dark, waiting for them to step forward. The first signs were subtle, crew members pausing mid-step, eyes unfocused, voices trembling. Then the darkness hit fully, invisible but undeniable, a pressure on the mind that no helmet, no shield could block. The fleet began to crumble, not from weapons but from despair. Pilots refused orders, soldiers argued over nothing, and engineers stared at blinking consoles as if the numbers themselves had betrayed them. Fear spread like wildfire, silent but deadly. Elias stood on the bridge, gripping the railing until his knuckles ached. He had faced death countless times, seen men bleed out in war zones, witnessed planets burn and cities collapse. But this was different. This was like staring into a force that did not merely kill, it erased the will to live. And for the first time, Elias felt doubt gnaw at him, deeper than any fear he had known before. Lyra screamed. Not a human scream, not a sound that the fleet could recognize, but a pure, piercing note that made metal vibrate and hearts ache. Her body glowed with soft, painful light. Elias ran to her side as she fell to the deck, clutching her head as if it could shield her from the unseen force pressing on her mind. She whispered something in her own language, words too alien to translate fully, but their meaning was clear. The dark had found them. Elias lifted her into his arms, ignoring the terrified stares of the crew. Around them, chaos reigned. Pilots dropped out of formation, ships collided in low-speed orbits, and soldiers turned against each other over petty arguments that escalated without warning. The dark fed on it all, invisible yet omnipresent, and the fleet seemed poised to self-destruct. In that moment, Lyra looked at Elias with wide, luminous eyes. There was fear there, yes, but also a message he could not ignore. She carried knowledge that could fight the dark, but at a cost. Her species had once served it, hopping obedience would spare them. It had not. She had fled, and now she held the key to humanity's survival, but the price would be hers alone if they chose to use it. The Council issued their orders: retreat, leave the dark for now, abandon Earth if necessary. Elias felt rage rising like fire in his chest. Retreat meant death, not just for him, but for every human colony, every life they had sworn to protect. He glanced at Lyra, whose trembling hand rested against his arm. Her glow pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat warning him, guiding him. Elias made his choice. The fleet would not flee. Humanity would not surrender to despair. Not today, not ever. He barked orders, rallying the remaining disciplined pilots and crew. He became a voice of defiance against the creeping silence, shouting over alarms and static, calling people to remember why they had survived so long, why humanity refused to break. It was impossible. It was reckless. And yet it was necessary. Lyra rose in his arms, her glow strengthening as if she recognized his choice. "You will fight," she whispered, voice trembling but steady. "And through you, humanity may survive." Elias stared at her, feeling the weight of everything he had lost, everything humanity had lost, and everything they might still lose. And then he did the only thing he could. He gave her trust, pure and unflinching. Not commands, not protection, trust. The dark pressed harder. Crew members screamed, some collapsed, others froze in shock. But a small, stubborn flame burned in those who had heard Elias' voice, who had seen him defy the impossible, and who had watched the strange alien girl, glowing and trembling, whisper that there was a way forward. The fleet held together, but barely. The price of defiance would come soon, and Elias knew that to save humanity, he would have to risk everything: his life, the lives of the crew, and possibly Lyra's very existence. Yet as he looked at her glowing eyes, he felt something stronger than fear: hope. The dark was vast. The dark was patient. But for the first time, it faced a force it could not consume: human defiance, guided by a girl who had survived what no one else could. And Elias knew, deep in his bones, that the next step would either break them all, or define what humanity truly was. Elias knew the dark would not relent. It was patient, unyielding, and insidious. But now, with Lyra at his side, he understood that the universe had given them a tool no one else had: human will. Lyra explained slowly, using gestures and soft sounds, that she could amplify the strength inside people, the stubborn spark that refused to bend, even in the face of hopelessness. She could turn it into something tangible, something that the dark could not consume. The plan was impossible. Elias had watched entire fleets fall to despair, entire civilizations vanish quietly. But he could see it now: a weapon made not of steel or fire, but of emotion, of determination, of hope. It required every soul in the fleet to fight, not just with guns, but with defiance itself. Human courage, grief, rage, and love would become the signal that could wound the dark. And at the center of it all would be Lyra, holding their will like a beacon. Elias spent hours rallying the fleet. Pilots who had once frozen under fear now trained with trembling hands, their eyes bright with determination. Engineers labored day and night, repairing systems that barely obeyed, speaking softly to each other to remind themselves why they could not fail. Soldiers wrote messages to loved ones they might never see again, then read them aloud to strengthen their resolve. The entire fleet became a living machine of willpower, fueled by the one thing the dark could not take: humanity itself. Lyra watched all of it with wide, luminous eyes, sometimes letting tears slip down her cheeks. She did not fully understand humans yet, but she felt their stubborn refusal to surrender, and it made her glow brighter, almost painfully so. "Why do they keep going?" she asked one night, voice trembling in the quiet corridor. Elias looked at her and smiled faintly. "Because someone has to," he said simply. "Because we don't give up, not for ourselves, not for each other, not for anyone. That is what makes us human." Lyra considered his words, tilting her head as if the concept was both foreign and beautiful. She reached out, her glowing fingers brushing his arm in a gesture that was not of command, but of connection. Elias felt a warmth he hadn't known since the wars of his youth. Here was a creature from another world, risking everything, believing in humans as much as he did himself. The fleet prepared for the final act. Ships took positions in orbit around Earth, engines humming in unison. Pilots braced for what might be their last flight. Soldiers tightened grips on weapons, and engineers synchronized the amplifiers that would carry Lyra's energy across the void. Elias stood at the bridge, watching it all, feeling fear and pride and hope collide inside him. Then Lyra stepped into the center of the formation, glowing steadily, her body a conduit for every heartbeat, every pang of grief, every flash of defiance in the fleet. Elias watched as the light built around her, soft at first, then brighter, more solid, more impossible. It was beautiful, terrifying, and alive. The dark had never faced anything like this. It was not a ship, not a fleet, not a weapon. It was humanity itself, unbroken and refusing to kneel. Elias felt his chest tighten. The weight of command had never felt heavier, yet never more meaningful. This was the moment that would decide the future, not only for Earth, but for every human life scattered across the stars. And through it all, he felt Lyra's presence, steady and reassuring, reminding him that even the smallest spark could start a fire in the darkest night. As the signal began to pulse through space, Elias whispered to himself and to her, "We will not fall, not today, not ever." Dark waited, patient and vast, but the humans had found their edge, a weapon made of will, a fire that no darkness could swallow. And at the center of it, glowing like a sun in the void, was Lyra, carrying the impossible hope of an entire species. The fleet trembled as the first wave of the dark touched them. Not with weapons, not with fire or explosions, but with silence and despair. Ships quivered, engines faltered, and crew members froze, staring into the void as if it were swallowing their very souls. Pilots clutched their controls tighter, soldiers gritted their teeth against invisible pressure, and engineers whispered prayers to machines that might fail them at any moment. Elias stood at the bridge, fists clenched, his heart hammering. He had known fear before, real, tangible fear, but this was different. The dark did not kill bodies, it consumed hope. And yet, at the center of the fleet, Lyra glowed steadily, a small sun in a sea of shadow. Her light pulsed with the rhythm of every human heartbeat, amplifying courage, defiance, and love until it became almost unbearable to look at directly. "Captain," one of the officers shouted, voice trembling, "they're collapsing, we can't hold them." Elias shook his head. "We hold them because we must. Humanity doesn't surrender." His voice carried across the bridge, over alarms, over panic, over the silent weight of space itself. Somewhere, deep in the void, the dark recoiled at the stubborn pulse of human will. From the center of the formation, Lyra lifted her glowing form higher. Pain etched her face, but her eyes remained bright, filled with determination and something Elias could not name. He ran toward her, ignoring the council's orders, ignoring the chaos that surrounded them. Crew members tried to stop him, but his purpose was stronger than protocol. Lyra was not just a weapon, she was hope, and hope, he knew, could not be abandoned. She looked at him as he reached her, tears streaking her glowing cheeks. "Elias," she whispered, voice soft but carrying across the bridge, I cannot hold it much longer." Elias gritted his teeth. "Then I'll stand with you, whatever it takes." Her glow intensified, and the fleet became a lattice of light and determination. Pilots screamed through the void. Soldiers fired their weapons not at enemies, but at the pressure of despair itself, and engineers channeled every ounce of energy into amplifying Lyra's power. Space itself seemed to bend and ripple around her. The dark shrieked silently, like a wound opening in reality. For the first time, Elias could see it bleed. But the cost was written across Lyra's pale face. Her body trembled violently. Her light flickered dangerously, and then she whispered something that made Elias' chest tighten unbearably. "You showed me what hope is. Now let me be it." Elias caught her hands, glowing warmth searing through him. He wanted to argue, to stop her, to bear the burden himself, but she shook her head gently. Her sacrifice was not weakness, it was strength, the ultimate act of defiance against the dark. The fleet roared in unity, a human chorus of bravery and grief, and Lyra's light became a beacon that pierced the void. Ships quaked, engines strained, crew members screamed and cried, yet the signal of human will did its work. The dark recoiled, twisted, and faltered. For the first time in its endless existence, it faced resistance it could not consume. Elias held Lyra as she began to fade, her form dissolving like morning mist under the sun. He whispered her name over and over, his heart breaking and soaring at the same time. Around them, the fleet burned with life, defiance, and courage, the legacy of one alien girl who had believed in humanity, and one human who had refused to let hope die. Then with a final pulse her light exploded outward, washing over the fleet and the void beyond. The dark shrieked, twisted, and finally, it began to retreat, wounded and frightened, leaving behind an emptiness that felt almost sacred. The stars, one by one, flickered back to life. Elias fell to his knees in the glow of the fading light, chest heaving, tears streaking his dirt-smudged face. Humanity had survived. The dark had been wounded, and somewhere in the cold emptiness of space, the girl who had become their hope had left her mark forever. Even as the void settled back into silence, Elias knew that Lyra's sacrifice was not the end. It was a beginning. Humanity had faced the dark and they had not surrendered. Not today. Not ever. The stars were quiet again. For the first time in what felt like centuries, the void beyond Earth's orbit was still. No tremors shook the fleet, no whispers of despair crept through the corridors. Humanity had survived. The dark had retreated. But the cost of victory weighed heavier than any weapon or enemy they had faced. Elias walked through the fleet, now eerily calm, his uniform streaked with dirt and sweat, his hands shaking slightly. He saw the faces of the crew, some were hollowed by grief, others glowing faintly with relief, and many simply stared at nothing as if the universe itself had changed. Pilots clutched their controls like lifelines they no longer needed. Soldiers knelt silently, whispering prayers for those they had lost. Engineers hugged one another, trembling with exhaustion and disbelief. Lyra was gone. Her glow had vanished, leaving only an echo of warmth in the hearts of everyone who had witnessed it. Elias stopped at the observation deck, staring at the slowly brightening stars. Earth's blue light shimmered in the distance, fragile yet steadfast, a reminder of what they had fought for. He felt a void inside himself that could not be filled, not by medals, not by the cheers of survivors. He had lost her, and yet he could feel the imprint of her courage lingering in the fleet, in humanity itself. She had changed them, shaped them into something stronger. Council members offered rewards, new commands, fleets to lead, honors that could have elevated him to legend. But Elias refused them all. He had no desire for titles or glory. His victory was not in awards, it was in survival, in the quiet defiance that had protected a species against an impossible enemy. He walked away from the council chambers, down empty corridors that still smelled faintly of burning circuits and fear, and he let himself remember Lyra. Sometimes at night when the ship was hushed, he could feel her presence, faint, like a whisper against his skin. He would stare at the stars and imagine her silhouette glowing softly, watching, smiling, guiding. She had become something more than alive. She was hope itself, a memory that refused to fade, a spark that lingered in the minds of every human who had seen her light. Colonies across the stars began to rebuild. Humanity moved cautiously, slower, wiser, but with a new fire burning within. They spoke of bravery and sacrifice, of defiance in the face of oblivion. Songs were written, statues were carved, stories were told of a pale girl who had taught them that the dark could be fought if only they refused to bow. And though Elias never spoke her name aloud, every action he took, every ship he commanded, carried a piece of her courage. One quiet cycle, deep beyond the Perseus Veil, Elias sat alone in the command seat, scanning the stars. He thought he was the only living witness to what had happened until his instruments flickered, subtle at first, almost like a heartbeat. Then he noticed it, a soft, warming signal, faint and impossible, emanating from nowhere and everywhere at once. It felt alive, familiar. He stared at the signal and his chest tightened. Could it be? Had the dark truly claimed her, or had humanity's defiance transformed her into something else entirely? The glow, the warmth, the hope she had carried, perhaps it had never truly left. Elias leaned forward, heart pounding, and whispered into the quiet bridge, "Lyra, is that you?" For a long moment nothing answered. And then, faint as a dream, a shimmer moved through the void, soft and radiant, reminding him of the girl who had believed in humanity when the universe itself had turned its face against them. Elias felt a rush of emotion, grief, joy, relief, and awe all at once. Humanity had survived the dark, but more importantly, they had learned what it truly meant to fight. Not with weapons, not with fleets, not with strategy, but with hope. And somewhere beyond the stars, Elias knew, Lyra still watched, still guided, still whispered courage to those who refused to break. Humanity had won, yes, but they had also become something new. Stronger, braver, and infinitely more alive than the universe ever expected. Because hope, once ignited, could never truly be extinguished, Elias drifted through the quiet corridors of the rebuilt fleet, the hum of engines soft beneath his feet. The war was over, the dark had retreated, and humanity had survived against impossible odds. Yet despite the victories, a hollowness lingered inside him. Lyra was gone, or at least, she had left in a way that no one could fully comprehend. Her glow had vanished, her voice had disappeared, but the memory of her courage and warmth burned brighter than any star. He paused at the observation deck, staring at Earth glowing gently in the distance. Colonies were alive again, rebuilding slowly but with determination. Pilots trained with renewed energy, soldiers prepared without fear, and engineers worked tirelessly, their hearts carrying the echo of something greater than themselves. Elias understood now what Lyra had shown him. Humanity's true power did not lie in weapons or technology, but in the stubborn, unyielding will to survive, to protect, and to hope. Then something impossible happened. A faint shimmer appeared beyond the Perseus Veil, subtle at first, like sunlight reflecting off a distant planet. Elias leaned forward, heart racing, feeling a warmth he had thought lost forever. The shimmer grew into a soft, radiant light, and in its glow he recognized her silhouette, delicate, glowing, impossibly alive. Lyra. She had not returned as a human being, nor fully as the alien girl he had met in the wrecked ship, but as something new, something more. She had become a living reminder of what humanity had achieved, a bridge between worlds, and a symbol of hope made flesh. "Elias," she said, her voice like a whisper carried on the wind, yet it filled the bridge entirely. "Your people, they are stronger than even I imagined. I have watched, I have waited, and you have not broken." He felt tears blur his vision. We never gave up," he said, voice thick. "You showed us how." Her glow pulsed gently, a soft rhythm that felt like a heartbeat. "I did not create hope, I only amplified it. It was already inside them, inside you. That is why the dark could not win." She floated closer, radiant yet tender, the warmth she exuded reaching deep into Elias' chest. "Your people taught the universe something essential. Even in the darkest void, courage, love, and determination are stronger than fear." Elias felt a quiet pride he had never known. The crew, the fleet, the scattered colonies, all of humanity had survived not because they were the strongest, but because they refused to surrender. And Lyra had been their mirror, their guide, and their proof that hope could take form and fight back. She smiled, faint but real, and Elias realized that the universe would never see humans the same way again. They had faced annihilation and emerged alive, carrying light where there had been darkness, carrying defiance where the void demanded obedience. Humanity had become more than survivors. They had become legends, woven into the fabric of the cosmos by courage and hope. "Will you stay?" Elias asked, voice soft, almost afraid of the answer. "For a time," Lyra said. "I cannot remain in your world forever, but I will be near, always when you need it most. And every time humans refuse to bow, every time hope burns brighter than despair, I will be there." Elias nodded, understanding without needing more. He turned to watch the fleet below, ships moving in formation, humans alive and unbroken, ready to spread their light into the darkness again. Lyra's presence, whether fully material or part of the universe now, had changed them forever. And in that moment, Elias understood the truth the dark could never comprehend. Hope, once ignited, does not die. Humanity had faced the void, stared into annihilation, and chosen to rise. They had survived, yes, but more than that, they had become a force that even the universe would remember. Lyra's glow faded gently, merging with the starlight beyond, leaving only a lingering warmth in the hearts of all who had seen her. Elias smiled, tears streaming down his face. The girl who had been their hope had not abandoned them. She had made them strong. Humanity had faced the dark. Humanity had endured. Humanity had won. And because one alien girl believed in them, and one human soldier refused to surrender, the universe had learned a truth it could never erase.